Welcome. Welcome back. We'll continue with our discussions. Time for now to look at risks lessons for corporate Kenya. My guest is here, Latif Wekesa, who is the General Manager and Head of Business Development at Minet Kenya. We'll be looking at some of those various areas like the cybersecurity, well-being, climate and insurance, and how this risk advisors as well as insurance firm, they're just doing to sort of like better help the corporate industry and workers in that sector. But also remember that you're waiting for a live link from Marsabit, where the Deputy President is, and this is in regards to the Marsabit Turkana Cultural Festival. It is the 14th edition. Our very own Regina Manyara is our eyes and ears for this event. But back to studio, Latif Wekesa, karibu sana to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, very welcome. Now, when you look at some of those areas like the risk landscape and how the year has been as we end 2025, in your view, what is this thing that corporate Kenya is learning or picking as lessons on as far as risks is concerned?
Yeah. Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be hosted here. As you rightfully put, I work at Minet, Kenya Insurance Brokers. We are the top leading risk advisor, not only in Kenya but across East Africa, and we pride for that because we enjoy 78 heritage years in terms of providing risk advisory services. Well, looking at 2025, it has been quite an interesting year. Where we sit risk advisors, we know risk as uncertainty, but definitely it has come to turn out to be certain. In terms of evolution and how risk dynamic is today, it's a bit different. Where we sit, we never knew that at some point there would be something called Gen Z, and most business were never prepared to pick up such risk. So what is it that we are telling our corporate clients and as our role as risk manager? Is a time to rethink, review, and create what we call red alerts that can capture any evolution in terms of risk. From the matrix that we, of course, laid the market, political unrest and stability has affected each and every entity. Cyber threat is no longer a story of the Europeans or mature markets, but is here with us. Remember, we are the leading partners in terms of acceleration, in terms of adoption of technology. That is key. Of course, we are also seeing a lot of climate change risk. Floods are really affecting most where we sit.
Just hold on a bit, Latif, as we try to work on your mic. Some bit of glitch there. But as we do that, remember that we are talking about risk lessons for corporate Kenya, particularly in the year ending 2025. What is this lessons that corporate Kenya can draw as far as risk management is concerned? Looking at also matters of risk advisories and what insurance firms are doing to perhaps help corporate Kenya. And this is in around various thematic areas, areas of climate. For instance, we're looking at areas of cyber threats, which is a very big issue, as just Latif was mentioning there, and also the overall well-being of workers, particularly when you look at the year endings, sometimes a lot of fatigue experienced among workers. What exactly is the entire sector doing? And also with the advent of technology and AI, when you talk about business, you can never miss talking about artificial intelligence and technology and how this is growing over time. To what end is this posing a risk, particularly to individuals in the corporate sector, as well as by extension businesses? And what are some of these risk advisory firms, what are some of these insurance firms doing to mitigate some of these issues? Looking at cyber threats, for instance, talking about the Cyber Security Act, which is an active matter in court, but really to what end is this affecting business? And what defense mechanisms can businesses have, especially as we head over to 2026? For instance, what are some of those lessons that they're learning when it comes to cyber threats, which is a very big and key issue? And as we draw nearer to the next year, what lessons are they learning? Are they picking as they head over to this year to sort of like safeguard and defend themselves? Because it's here to stay. Technology is here to stay. Artificial intelligence is here to stay. But then we need to be better prepared for this. This is what we are discussing with our guest, Latif Wekesa. I believe now your mic is well. You can continue. some of those lessons that corporate Kenya can learn as far as risk is concerned. You had mentioned a few. You can continue finishing on what that is that we can learn.
Thank you, Doreen. Traditionally, what we do within Minet is we have a matrix under which we track risk. Remember, I mentioned that we now enjoy 78 years being in this market. Yeah. So literally, we have seen every evolution. Of course, the interesting fact is the social and the political unrest that we did see over the years. Chances are it could have escaped most of the CEOs, knowing that the definition of terrorism was majorly skewed to the likes of extremist group like the Al-Shabaab. But now here we see an organized group framed in the name of Gen Z, pushing for change and pushing government. So technically that falls within a political angle. We see the destruction, of course, which happened as a result of that agitation within our town. So how are we prepared as an organization in terms of to secure that? Of course, another thing we are seeing in 2025, high regulatory scrutiny within the market, enforcement within various regulatory bodies that we see, central bank putting pressure on banks to make sure that they comply with certain regulation. Of course, that comes with liability in terms of when there is a breach of the guidelines. So as a CEO, where you sit today within your space, how are you able to monitor? Do you have a matrix at where we sit? Of course, the climate change risk and the floods. It's estimated that in the market we have lost or rather accumulated over 6 billion worth of claims that has actually resulted from the floods. Then the question is, do you have a tool in terms of risk transfer tools as a measure, and how has it adopted, or is it, are you able to measure the responsiveness? And as risk advisor, that's one of the key roles actually we do play in the market, just to make sure that whatever framework of risk management tools that you have in place, you're able to put in place. I think if you look at also the data that is available about the cyber threat, I think close to 4.5 billion threats have been seen within the market. Every organization is in terms of race to automate, but are they ready in terms of building the cyber resilience? Because now we have moved from the framework of cyber security to cyber resilience. Do you have a response mechanism plan in place? Do you have a recovery? Do you have a team that can be able to support? And also, do you have a tool, a correct tool in terms of risk transfer? And as risk advisor, that is actually the role that we do play.
Yeah, and you talk about moving digital, and it just reminded me of the e-government, e-GP that really was a craze, and how we need to move to this space. But you raise a very pertinent question. It is good to move there. It is necessary for tracking and everything else. But then, are we ready for the threats therein? Do we have stamina? Do we have defense mechanisms for that? Before we look at even climate, before we look at cybersecurity, just from all the matters you have raised as far as those risks is concerned, as risk advisories, what are you doing in your capacity to perhaps safeguard and help businesses cope with this? Because some of these things are just here to stay.
Correct.
Yeah.
We do have a framework that we operate, and it's a global standard across. Remember, we are one of the leading brokers that have a privilege to enjoy the networks of leading insurance brokers globally, the likes of the Aon. Those are actually our partners. So we have the capacity and ability to tap in terms of what is happening today in London and able to localize. So one of the frameworks that we have actually built is in terms of how do we ensure that we map a risk of an organization independently but direct to the operation, and also develop a predictability approach in terms of this is what is being faced now, then this is the future. Then number two, how do we align the growth and the strategic partner or rather objective of an organization to the future, so that we have a clear roadmap that has, while we deal with the risk that faces the organization now, but as they develop, depending on their objective going the future, then are there frameworks from a risk management transfer tools that are there. And one of the things that we do basically sit with the key business leaders within the organization. We do what we call a workshop. And that workshop will involve every head of business and like, look, this is how you operate. And from where we sit, from the benchmark, these are actually emerging solutions. So we do what we call a customized solution. So you develop, you design, then you review, then you execute. So with that framework, we are able to touch each and every what we usually say the segment or operation within the company, and just to make sure that any dynamic or any change of the risk should also reflect how the organizations are actually moving forward. So that has always been how we do our business. Then, of course, more importantly is with availability of much proprietary data within the Aon group, then we are able to actually bring the global standard and look at, yes, this is how your objective look like, but a similar organization maybe in London operating within your same space, this is how they are looking, or this where they were 20 years ago, and these were the challenges that they did face. So with that, we're able again just to harness the risk management approach from the company perspective.
All right. Now, Latif, one would say that it is one thing for you to assist businesses as it pertains to these risks, regardless of whichever ones they are. But you as risk advisors, as insurance firm, has this risks, first of all, affected you as firms before you come down to businesses and corporate and see how best you can assist them, and how do you deal with that as the first line? Yeah,
of course, we run business, so it's not any different from any other organization. Only that you're running a broadcasting house, then our side is also to take risk. Yes, within the insurance framework, the cyber threat space, remember we fully automated, so we depend on system. So in case of any cyber attack, or in case of any injury affecting an employee, just that the business environment is a bit different. But what we do, of course, within the organization, whatever we implement internally in terms of the framework that we do have from a risk resilience perspective, is the same that we implement. Now, I'll pick, for example, the cyber related incident. So we have a cyber resilient framework within the organization that actually guides step by step in terms of not only just prevention, but do we have a response management plan? For example, if there's an attack today, what is it that happened? Then do we have a recovery plan? Then more importantly, where do we take the residual risk? So we as an organization, we have also taken up the cyber insurance solution, that yes, as much as we do everything to defend, but any residual risk, then we do transfer. Remember, insurance, the concept of insurance is about sharing of the risk. So as much as we pick up risk from the corporate, who the only point of advantage we have is ability and capacity and appetite to manage the risk, while other institutions, other corporates, for example, manufacturing, their core will actually be producing either beverage or whatever sector that they will be. So while we pick risk as a product, we also have a mechanism that we share within the insurance space. So the product that we do consume from insurance product as a tool of risk transfer is also a similar product that we actually roll it over. The only maybe difference with us is maybe from a product perspective, we are more risk conscious. So our appetite in terms of consumption of this product might be much more higher. One, because of availability of information, and just make sure that we build a much more framework that is more resilient.
Yeah, because that would have been important to understand. While you protect me as the business or as being incorporated, for you as the advisor, what are you doing to safeguard? Because if I see you safeguarded, then I can be comfortable and confident that I'm well.
Yes.
All right, now let's stick on that cyber threats, Matt, as one of those risk areas. And just let me pick your mind and in your view how these threats have escalated locally and by extension globally, and the kind of risk it actually poses, largely in those businesses or even corporate Kenya.
Great. I think one previously the lacking or the missing point within the Kenyan space was actually legislation. Now we have a Data Protection Act which actually provides a clear definition and also attaches liability in terms of how you handle data and in terms of data breach. So that aside, we'll always pick any liability to any organization. And number one, what we do for our organization, for example, when it comes to issues to do with the cyber, and number one, we look at the compliance, the in-house compliance in terms of Data Protection Act. So we segment, are you a data controller, are you a subject data, because anybody that is collecting personal identifiable information, you're actually subject to comply with the data protection. So by that virtue, already you are exposed to, or rather you're a candidate of a cyber liability threat, because you have to comply within the operation. Then number two, how automated are you? Remember, digital space has made the world a global village. That is the second that we look at. Now you're moved into automation. Then is it an in-house automation or third party? So what we have actually seen is most of the cyber threat that happen, or most attack, are actually coming from the suppliers, the vendors. And what I'll give an example is, you look at the integration between the banks and the telco companies. So you have your mobile app accessing through the bank. So it's an easy area that you can actually find an attacker will actually use either your mobile application to get into. So with that, we can be able actually to map and put you now within a framework. Then we move to what we call pen testing and penetration, just to see how your cyber resilient framework is. And sometimes we usually encourage our clients. So where we sit, we'll do the first basic, then through other experts, then we do encourage our client now on the environment that you operate. It's better now to take a full penetration testing just to see how you are resilient of the cyber is. Then any residual risk that is there, then the risk transfer of the cyber insurance solution comes in. So that's how we are able to support our clients.
Cyber resilience, does it go down to an individual or in the entire company or corporation? How does this work?
Where we sit today, and I'll just point out, I think the first regulation in terms of the cyber framework was actually published, should be in 2020, if I'm not wrong, by the central bank. And the focus was actually in terms of the payment service provider. And it was actually putting responsibility to key individuals, that is the CEO and CTO. But today, what we encourage our corporates that we handle and the people that we advise, can you elevate the cyber threat to the level of the board, so that it's a board discussion, it's not an individual discussion. We have seen organization with the total shutdown. So it's a discussion that is not an individual discussion, but is a board discussion that needs to actually to be part and parcel of their strategy and how they respond, because it's the leading global risk that we face today. So it's not left to only that IT admin, but it's a discussion that we elevate to the board, so that it is a governance discussion, and it's a purely focus that every decision that is made at the board level should actually be implemented to be able to support the cyber resilient.
Yeah, and that really looks like to be the next level of thinking, because also just going back by what we saw some 2 weeks back with the shutdown and some of those government agencies, and the attack that services were literally on a standstill.
Absolutely.
Going down to, it's not an IT expert kind of thing, it's actually a collective effort. But there's one thing you've mentioned when you're giving the example perhaps of banks and telco companies, saying that some of these threats, it's someone who knows someone who actually knows someone. It's not an alien outsider somewhere, somehow there. What does this speak to our mannerisms? Because again, you could put all these safeguards and mitigating factor, but if it goes down to our morals, there'll always be an avenue of trying to get into that and still
in fact
have those threats.
One of the statistics that is actually available globally, and one of the avenues that organizations have actually found themselves victim of actually cyber is actually insider information. And sometimes we are difficult economic times where you'll find maybe one of your employee could be compromised, and maybe they could actually issue data or provide critical password that could actually be there. So in terms of what we call another layer of introduction to what we call human firewall. So human firewall, we will actually ensure that how do you manage disgruntled employees. So not only the firewalls that we do have, but do you also have a framework in terms of human firewall? Then number two, what is so common, there is intentional and intention unknowingly. So we have a lot of what we call siphon, where you have, or rather sometimes somebody is social engineering, and it largely affects an organization because of lack of training. So you have an email which has actually been generated from a known source, but the domain of email tends to appear to be similar. It could be a payment that you needed to actually make out to a vendor, and somebody actually shares with you similar email with giving you instruction. So you, without double checking, So it will have an invoice, but failure to double check, maybe the bank accounts will actually be not the actual bank account. I can take, for example, now with the issue of AI automation, where there's actually AI generating voices. You can be maybe seated in your office, you get a Teams invite, no camera is actually put on. They've actually imitated the voice, or rather cloning the voice of the CEO, and you are given instructions. We have this supplier, could you please proceed and pay? So we are actually seeing that happen. So the aspect of human firewall in terms of how do you handle this grant, and more importantly, training and just creating awareness. And that's actually what we do in terms of when we speak about cyber to our clients, just to make sure that how do we create awareness that these are the key watch points to watch when in your day-to-day operation.
And I think that's a very critical element when you look at the human element of it. And we'll look at that in a short while. But let's take a bit on those cyber threats. And you mentioned a bit earlier about Data Protection Act.
Correct.
You also have the Cyber Security, the amended. Never mind, it's an active matter in court. Some elements of it still being a bone of contention to some section of Kenyans.
Yes.
But then this brings up the question of, is it really a question of just legislation and laws? Because we can have all this in place, but sometimes we sort of like still missing the point. It still looks like we are missing the point. What really is the challenge, and how do we navigate this? And as you respond to that, what are you doing as risk advisors to help navigate this?
Yeah, I think from a risk advisory perspective, maybe I can pick from that.
Yes.
One is our key role is actually to create awareness. And our awareness from a standpoint for us is majorly the aspect of transfer and making sure that our organizations, or rather clients, are aware that cyber threat is real and is here to stay, and it's dynamic. It will keep on changing from day to day. So that's actually our major role. So number two, when it comes to the aspect of legislation, our key role, or rather just to safeguard our clients, is to look at the aspect that actually attaches a legal responsibility to, for example, what happens if there is a personal breach of information. And that's why I say, how do we put you? Are you a data controller? Are you a subject data? Then from there, now we'll be able to actually show you the map, then offer the solution in terms of the transfer. So our role as risk manager is not necessarily to go ahead and interpret the law, but look at the key aspect that attaches liability to an organization within the act. Then is it a risk that can be transferred through an insurance tool, or is it a risk that could be contained by putting regulations or framework within the organization? So that's where we stop. Then we leave the legal interpretation to the lawyers.
To the legalese of it.
To the legalese.
All right, so then we with that, Latif, what are some of these threats that you're seeing in 2025, even as the year winds down, those cyber threats, to be very specific, for corporates, Kenya, and businesses?
I'll pick, for example, I think during, and maybe we'll see it, during Chan, tickets at some point system were not working, and what was there is there could have been possibility that remember, Kenya is one of the hub of IT, we call Silicon Savannah, so there are quite intelligent young men here that can be able to generate robotics. And one of the key issues actually that there could be robots which are actually being injected within the system to actually buy tickets. And sometimes now the pressure, that's where the system was actually collapsing. So for an organization, number one, I think as we move to close of the year, is do you have a framework in terms of how you manage your cyber? Do you monitor it 24 hours? Have you embraced adoption maybe of IT just to help you, or rather AI, to help you actually have that 24 hours release? And then number two, do you have a risk partner that actually walks you through? Then have you taken time to actually review? So we have Kenya being within the COMESA and also falling within what we call the general data protection. So you'll be transacting with organization maybe from Europe within that framework. So look at even your partners, the people that you interact or do business with. What are the legal framework within the organization that speaks about cyber? So if you have deficiency in terms of that capacity, then I'll request that you visit us as Minet Kenya Insurance Brokers. We have a framework that we've actually established that we can walk you through, help you to actually look at the various pinpoints that could actually fall short. But of essence is, as a business leader, as the CEO, we are aware that these are some of the risks that may give you sleepless night. But you have a correct partner. This is a solution that are actually available within the framework. So cyber threat, so you look at the vendors, how do you interact with your vendors? Number two, even from the bare minimum, how have you complied within the data protection? Do you have a data protection officer? How often do you update your IT and the system regulations and framework within the organization? So those are the key pertinent issues that any CEO should actually be looking at. Then number two, it's not a CEO responsibility. Please elevate it to the board level so that it's a governance issue that is a collective responsibility.
So this question of updating, sometimes you even have it in your phone, update the system, and this is just why are you disturbing me? So some of these things actually feed into this.
Absolutely, it does feed into this. So you can, just like any other normal organization, like maybe the supermarket, you'll find they do stock take, maybe monthly or weekly. So it should be part of the framework that any organization should have. Can we have maybe major monthly, quarterly updates? So you can pick one of the Saturdays where people are not maybe busy within the office and just make sure that all the updates actually are running through.
That is very necessary, as you mentioned. Now, with the advent of new media, technology by itself, and now AI, which is really revolutionizing, you think of it, businesses, corporate, whatever it is, you talk to face recognition, the voice and the likes. So essentially, this AI as a tool, what kind of risks is it posing largely as a whole, and what defense mechanisms can corporate employees, can businesses employ even as they head over to the new year, 2026, to better safeguard?
Absolutely. So we have a solution where we talk about integrating cyber insurance, what we call commercial crime, and what we call technology errors and of omission, which basically seeks to take care of that framework, especially where there's a lot of adoption of AI, because AI will come in different formats. There's where they can come from a third-party vendor, and one of the issue is how can they be used to actually siphon passwords that you can actually have access. And of course the major threat will actually be where you are holding actual cash, maybe virtual cash, through mobile wallets. And we have actually seen transfers of cash or loss of funds being taken to that. Then number two, we're also seeing what we call the ransomware attack, where you have encryption of data and actually loss of cash. So one of most recent, and I'll pick up one of the case that was before Senate, and that was during the impeachment of the Kericho governor. You remember one of the questions that they were actually asking is whether at the point of voting the system had second factor authentication. So there is that what we call adoption of zero trust. So zero trust security means that for everything, please verify, don't trust. And that's where second authentication factor actually comes in. So every transaction that is actually done, don't assume.
Part of the reason why it flopped.
Yes, exactly. There was no second authentication, and the IT team could not actually support that. Indeed, this person really voted, because it was only one way. So that is actually a global standard, that zero trust in terms of security. There should be always second authentication multi-factor for any organization.
Yeah, I hear you. Now, just aside from cyber threats, another key issue that perhaps you can look at as the year winds down also is the question of climate risk and insurance. And you can look this from the facets of the heavy rainfall, the destructions therein, and also the drought. In fact, yesterday, some leaders from northern Kenya were asking government to declare drought a national disaster. And you realize for us as a country, and even by extension the region, if it's not about drought, whereby we have the loss of lives and the likes, we now have a heavy rainfall, destruction of property, loss of lives, and therein. As insurance firms, for such disasters as this, were you prepared? across the year, and how did this look like for you as far as risks?
From of course, from the insurance angle, remember our role is actually to transfer the residual risk. So it's an appetite that sits within the insurance space. So we have a number of products, and maybe what we need to do more of this show is actually to provide education and just educate the member of the public. From a risk transfer from climate perspective, especially from agric, we have solutions which are called parametric insurance solution. We have what we call weather index, and we also have a standalone flood insurance. And I think if you check through the media, it should be in Kitui. If not, should be in Kitui last year. I think through one of the leading reinsurers, Swiss Re, flood insurance was actually claim was actually paid, where I think, if I'm not wrong, about 21 farmers also were actually affected. So where I sit from the industry space as a risk practitioner, I think the gap that is actually lacking within the market is one, the education and capacity and awareness, just to take it to the farmer. Then number two is build confidence to the customer, so that they can be able to know that, yes, even if I pick up an insurance, there will actually be a payout. So and one of the advantage, of course, if you have a risk partner like Minet, our role is actually to bridge that trust deficit. Remember, our principle is actually the client that we work for. So we'll be able to actually advise and advise you who is the correct partner, in addition to what product actually fits. So we have specific products, to an extent even what we have, an area yield insurance. So you find maybe you're coming, myself from Western Kenya, there is expectation in terms of this is actually known area of harvest.
Yes. Then
by bad luck, then, or rather blessing, which is more over and above, you find the floods, then all the harvest has actually been known, but you have historically what you have always harvested in a particular size of land. So if you pick up an area yield insurance, it will actually be able to help you recover. When it comes to, of course, the issue of drought, I think through the World Bank, ZEPRI, and I think Kenya Development Corporation, the KCD, there is a drive project. I think it was a pilot for about 14 counties, and that seeks actually to protect the counties within the semi-arid with a solution in terms of a risk transfer. Should there be a drought, how much cash do you need to buy fodder to keep your animal until the next season, where there could be short rain? So in terms of solutions are there. So the OMS of us is actually, one, the duty to actually educate, penetrate. Remember, the insurance penetration is at 2.3%, stagnated for quite some time. So how do we actually use such platform like Channel One, just to make sure that we move? And even, for example, with the cultural festival that is happening in Marsabit,
yes.
Do they know that there's what is called event liability? So if there's a stampede today there and there's a loss of life, so what happens? So you find that the products are actually readily available, but the missing link is actually, one, to build the trust and educate more the client to actually know that these are solutions which are available. Then, of course, more importantly,
yes.
you remember we have more, maybe largely, Kenya will have much more small-scale farmers. Then are we able to actually break down the products, the bites that these small clients can be able to buy and afford insurance? And that's now we have micro insurance product that we've actually put in place that can actually support clients, not only from agric, but even from health cost financing. You're getting a product as low as 3,000, 4,000 shillings, and also giving an opportunity or latitude to actually spread the payout. So that's the duty that we do have as risk advisors.
Yes, and just as you mentioned the gaps, there's a lot of creation of awareness that looks like is still lacking. Even as you mentioned, the event planning, insurance. I would even wonder if someone would even think about that until when it happens. So what are some of these practical lessons that businesses can learn, particularly when it comes to dealing with climate risks and how to better manage, from your view?
So I think we will not, we just want to go in 2024. I think that has been the worst year in terms of flood. And like I'd mentioned, we had about 6 billion worth of losses that are actually paid, and it's up to date they're actually being paid through the market. One of the
1 year later they're still being paid.
Yeah, they're still being paid. One of the lessons, I'm forgetting about this, but there's one person that has been funded by Zuckerberg. I think he was doing about 100 acres in Kitui, and one time he went to the farm. There were heavy rains and there was nothing actually to harvest. So there are real life example where farmers or any other entrepreneur have actually suffered because of climate change. So I think one of our duties actually, how do we amplify such examples, and maybe through NGOs that work with farmers. So our role is, how do we amplify, maybe through the government, Ministry of Agriculture, how do we amplify that such that it's a real life example? And also when we make the payout, how do we make noise about it so that people know that indeed when you do transfer the risk, then you'll actually have a payout.
I hear you. Now another area is employee well-being. As an advisor, risk advisor, insurance firm, what are some of these issues, trends you're seeing, particularly when it comes to employee burnout as the year comes to an end? So it's sometimes a general trend. First of all, why is that, and what are you seeing, and how to better deal with that?
Well, I think number one is there's a lot of economic pressure, and I'll speak from the service industry perspective because we provide service. So the expectation of every investor in any organization is actually returns. So we find one, with slow economic slowdown,
Yes.
there will be in terms of limitation, in terms of new hire. People will not want to spend more because your business are looking at probably sustainability. So with that, there could be an increase in terms of workload. Then with an increase of workload, then of course burnout. Then sometimes the quality of service will actually be affected to the client, and sometimes it can actually lead to a loss. So one of the things that we have done, particularly within Minet and also for our client, is we have a mental wellness center that supports employees plus also the clients. So that is covering both social psychological support in terms of sometimes you just need somebody to talk to. Yeah, that, hey, I'm just burning out. What is it that can be able to do? Then introducing of recreational facilities and or maybe swimming for your employee, just to make sure that they are pretty active. That then can you give them maybe a hybrid solution? We have work policy. Work 2 days in office, 3 days at home, or vice versa. So whichever actually fits you. So you can decide to come up in the morning, work, then in the afternoon take a break, just to make sure that that burnout does not really affect the performance and the mental state of the employee.
All right. So some of those investments in the workplace, Latif, what is this that businesses can employ? Because then if you have proper investment, you have a productive workforce.
Correct.
How do this go hand in hand? And how can they invest in this?
I think number one, in any investment for an organization is actually the employee.
Yes.
So when you keep them healthy, then definitely the results will actually come. So introduction of fringe benefits support to employees will actually be a key factor in terms of how do they provide. So some of these policies, like creating a recreation facility, should be a benefit that is actually embedded within the employment contract of an employee. And by that will actually see a return being realized by being intentional in terms of how you manage your employees.
All right. Now, as we wind down, Latif, what will be perhaps your closing message when it comes to corporate and businesses as a whole, as far as leveraging opportunities is concerned and proper defense mechanisms on the risks available?
So as of course, as we be that basically we'll be looking at 2026. What is it that organizations should be looking at?
Yes.
From a risk management perspective, our clarion call for every organization or SME. Most insurance contracts or risk framework are actually coming to an end within this year. So it's a time that you need to take time to actually review and look at the past incidents, whether the risk framework that you have actually employed in place, has it served the purpose? If it has not served the purpose, then the next obvious thing is for you to look at a partner who has capability, understanding of how risk is managed overall. And I dare say that partner will be actually Minet Kenya Insurance Broker. We welcome you, that we can give you a pro bono advice in terms of give you a framework, profile for you how your risk is, and also give you a plan how to move forward to manage the risk.
Yeah, this just all just to better manage risks and better prepare and equip yourself.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Latif has been Latif Wekesa, General Manager and Head of Business Development at Minet Kenya, and what has formed center of this conversation in this last hour, risk lessons for corporate Kenya, how businesses and corporate Kenya can be able to manage risks even as we head over to 2026. Thank you so much for making time for us. This has been BizCheck. I'm Doreen Arange, paving way for Tangrini Kurunzi coming in the next hour.